now we are ready to move forward with our slices and take those into Save for Web and Devices in order to get them out there on your websites. So let's do that. Let's go up to File, Save for Web and Devices. And you'll see I have a 4 layup output here. You can change your layup at any time. If you want to see the entire graphic, click Original. If you want to see just 2 views side by side, you can do that. If you want to see 4 views side by side, you can choose that. I'm going to leave this at the default of 4 up. What's particularly important about this, as we get ready to choose the file format that we're going to have for each one of these individual slices, is that you take a look at the information that's at the bottom of each one of these little individual windows. Here in the upper left is the original PSD file, how the graphic looks. See how nice and clean and sharp that is? And it says this particular guy is 2.64 megabytes large. Okay, file that away in the back of your mind. Let's move over to its neighbor. The second window is stored as is shown what would happen. It shows you what would happen if it was a JPEG. The JPEG for this particular quality is at 1.313 kilobytes. So a significant difference in file size between the two. I can see that it has a quality level of about 25, which is pretty low. And then I also have this information. This information shows you how quickly this would download at whatever the download speed is for that particular host. You can change this if you'd like to see different types of download times. You can, if you have access to a T1 line, this would take probably a lot less than a second. If you have access to a really, really old modem, this guy would take about 2 seconds to go down. So let's take a look at this other one here. And you can just play with those settings. Now, why is that download time important? It's important if you're gearing your audience towards somebody that may not have the latest, greatest internet cable. It's important if they don't have the best processing, those kinds of things. So keep in mind what your audience is as you're optimizing for the web, and set your settings appropriately. So I'm going to come up and play with a couple little things now. Now this quality level, like I said, is pretty low. Let's come up here into the upper right hand corner, and we're going to change a few things. Change the setting from low to high, and you'll see that this quality now has gone up to 60. We can see that there is definitely a difference, and I'm going to see what happens if I set it to very high. I'm getting better. Usually, what I'm looking for are little squiggly artifacts. You can really see the squiggly artifacts in this lower right-hand corner, up here at the top of the lettering, right there. That is definitely something you want to get rid of. So you have to decide how many of those artifacts are going to be okay for you and how many you can get away with. So I'm going to set mine to maximum because 1 second download is not very much at all. So I think that looks pretty good there. Now, make sure that you have your slice tool set. And I just wanted to just make sure that you know that before I clicked on something inside those windows, I was setting the overall settings for the JPEGs for all of the slices that are there. Now we're going to go back in and set each one individually and make sure that those still work beautifully. So I've got my slice tool. I'm going to click in that header area. I can see that I'm still optimized as low. Let's go up to maximum. Now you can see I've got a 3-second download time, so I probably won't be able to do that. But I might go ahead and do it anyway because this is my header graphic, Header graphics are incredibly important. It's one of the first things that people see, so those have got to be high quality. So let's leave that guy set to that. I'm pushing down the space bar, and we're going to take a look at some of these other graphics. I'm going to click and highlight this area. It doesn't look too bad through there. I might just leave that guy set at low, or maybe just bump him up to medium. That's still not bad. In 1 second. Let's try high. Okay, it's not bad. So I'm going to click again. I'm going to drag a little bit further. That'll be fine. That's no problem. I've got this gradient down here. I'm going to set that guy to very high because I want it to be very smooth and beautiful. Okay, I'm going to press my spacebar key and let's come back up to the top. Now let me show you how these other two windows really come into play. I'm going to click on that header graphic, and I've got this set at the very best quality that there is possible. This guy is set to a different quality level. And then finally this one is also set to a different quality level. So let's see what happens side by side if we change those to maybe a high setting. And then we'll change this guy to a medium setting. So you can definitely see that this one has no artifact problems whatsoever. This one's starting to get a little grainy. This one is getting a lot grainy. Much, much more. So that's the nice feature of having 4 of those views up side by side, is you can really go from frame to frame and see which setting does a better job for you. So once you have optimized each one of the slices for whatever file type, you can make a couple more choices. If you think that you're still getting a little bit too much of a problem, you can always try a different file type. Like, you can try Ping 28 and see if that guy is any better. And actually, that looks pretty good. But be sure to compare and contrast the file size, 50.34 kilobytes for a JPEG, and 95.2 kilobytes for Ping. So that means that the Ping is out of the running because I can get a great quality with a JPEG and a smaller file size. So just know that you can play with those guys, and you've got lots of options. So let's go and check out the output settings. Now the output settings are not easily seen. They're actually up here in this upper right-hand corner. You have to know they're there. Click on that guy, and let's click on Edit Output Settings. Okay, so when Photoshop spits out those slices, it automatically gives you a couple options. You can spit it out as HTML. It will actually create an HTML page for you. You can spit it out as just the slices. You can spit it out as background or just saving files. The two that you're probably going to be most concerned with are slices and HTML, though the background, I believe your textbook walks you through that. The background can be nice to see because it will show you how a repeating background will look. But for now, we're going to concentrate on just HTML. You can tell it to use a different flavor of HTML. You can say, hey, be stricter. I want you to use XHTML instead of just plain old HTML. I typically leave these formatting things set to the default. I tell it to include the comments. I always want them to add the alt attribute. The alt attribute is used in HTML for accessibility purposes, and you really need to make sure that those are taken into consideration. Okay, let's click on Next. So this is more about what you want the slices to do. And you've got two options. You can tell it to generate a table, or you can tell it to generate a CSS page. A table just means, hey, spit out an HTML table for me. CSS means I don't want a table, I want divs instead. The generate table is nice if you're working with HTML email. For everything else, I would generate CSS. With the default slice naming, you would get whatever the name of the slice is, plus an underscore, plus whatever the layer name or slice is, plus, just lots of things here. All we really want is the layer name or slice, okay? You want an underscore and then the layer name. That's just fine. And actually I'm going to choose none. Let's get rid of that guy. I don't want anything in that top one. I just want the layer name or slice. You know what? I'm just going to get rid of all these. That guy. So let's just get layer name or slice. That'll keep it simpler. Okay. Go to next. This is working with your background. So we don't really need this for what we're doing, but you can play around this in your next endeavors. Okay, file naming. We're going to leave these guys alone. That looks great. If you need to change your file name compatibility, you'll notice that it's got Unix selected. Unix is the trickiest one, so I would just leave that selected and not worry about those two. It's going to put your images in a folder named images, which is really nice. Click next, and it takes you back to your original screen. Now click OK. Now, when we send these slices out, it's going to generate slices that say something like slice 1, slice 2, slice 3, slice 4, slice 5, which is really obnoxious when you're trying to figure out how things are put together, what slice goes where. So there's a better way. So click Done really quick. It's going to remember your settings. We're going to go back into our Slices tool and actually the Slice Select tool, and we're going to do a little bit of naming to make things a little easier. Come up to the upper left-hand corner, double click on that little envelope, and you can see what the name of your slice would be. So can you imagine simple web layout smashing _01, simple layout smashing _03. It would just keep on going down there, and we just don't want that. Make it mean something. So I'm going to tell this to be called header. Now, if you want to, you can tell it to be a clickable header. I can send it out to http://www.cnn.com if I want to. I can set my target attribute. I'm going to set it to target _blank, which means open it in a new window. I can set the alt tag to whatever I wish it to be. So this is going to be the Hack Web Development and Design. There we go. It also shows you your dimensions, which is really nice. When you're coding, if you don't know what your dimensions are, you can always grab your slice tool, open up the image inside of Photoshop, and you'll be able to see how wide it is and how tall it is. Click OK. And let's do one more. Let's do the footer. So I'm going to come down here and click on that little envelope. I'm just simply going to call it footer. I'm not going to worry about a URL, so I don't need a target. Let's put an alt tag in there. And click OK. Now go back to File, Save for Web and Devices. Okay, and it's going to remember everything that we set before. I'm going to get rid of that ping. I'm going to turn it to a JPEG, and there we go. Now, hit Save. It's going to ask you where you wish to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Now, I want to see the HTML page and the images. You could tell it to do just the images only, or also just the HTML only if you choose. For settings, we're going to leave those set to the custom. For slices, you've got a couple of choices. You've got all slices, all user slices, and selected slices. So just know which one you're using. Remember that user slices are something that you create, and the other slices are the ones that Photoshop creates. Your slices will appear in blue. Photoshop slices will appear in gray. And I believe your text walks you through how to change back and forth between those two. So this looks pretty good to me. I'm going to save it right onto my desktop. I'm going to click Save. And because I had done this a little bit earlier, it's going to ask me if I can replace it, and I'm going to tell it yes. So now let's go take a look at what it's going to look like in the web page. Ah, gorgeous. This looks really great at the top. This is a little grainy at the bottom, so I would have to go back in there and redo that. Yeah, that's got some banding, so I would have to up the quality level of that bottom one. So that's actually a good thing to see. Now, let's take a look under the hood. I'm going to open up Dreamweaver and kick this guy off, just so you can get an idea of what everything is, what's happening behind the scenes there. So just take a second, and there we are. You may be asking yourself, or saying to yourself, hey, that is so fabulous. Photoshop spits out HTML code for me. I'll never have to code again. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. You still will have to code because of the way Photoshop spits it out. If you take a look up here in the styles, in the head section, first of all, they are embedded styles. They're not an external style sheet. As you know from your Web 125 class, external styles are much more powerful because you can take them, you can put them on hundreds of pages and it's not a problem. So you would have to move all your styles to start with. The second thing is, look at this guy. All of the positions are absolute. With the rise of having to program for iPhones and iPads and all these kinds of different screen sizes, we are moving away from having a fixed and rigid web layout. So when you start when you've got something that's coded as position absolute, that doesn't give you any flexibility whatsoever to be able to meet those new guidelines. So you would have to really, really change the code to get this to work properly. Let's see what it does down at the bottom. So you can see that you've got divs set up. Notice div ID01, which doesn't mean anything, right? But look at this guy. This is the one that we set up in the slices. The ID of header. That makes all the sense in the world. So I would strongly recommend that you go ahead and set those IDs. It will just make your life so much easier. Okay. That brings us to the end of that little demonstration. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you for the next video.